Phoebe, Zen, Chitra, and John. The motion before this House is, this House believes that the LGBT rights movement should abandon the Born This Way campaign. I now invite the Prime Minister to open the case with government. Here we go.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. LGBT, is the group of people that they are actually minority in today's society. They are referred to the group of people who are lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transsexuals. They are actually under current situation. They are actually suppressed by the today's society because there are a lot of policies and measures are actually in favor of them. So they come together to form a movement. They call it LGBT rights movement to fight for the rights they fight for this right for this group of people. And this movement and since they are actually why they are suppressed by the society is because the sexual orientation is different from the majority of the people who are actually straight. So they have to come together to get the power to fight against a stronger power as we can find in today's society. So why they have to come together to fight for their rights? Because under today's society's model, a lot of legal system and also legal systems and also the marriage policy are actually based on the nuclear family model. Nuclear family model refers to a family where the father is actually male and mother is a female. So since based on this model, the LGBT, this group of people, they actually do not have any right. They have a lack of right in this situation, so they have to fight for it. Say for example in California, after years of fighting, they finally have the right to get married, so that they have the legal system changed so that adjusted so that they can enjoy the same right as the nuclear family, as I said before. And so what is Born, and they are also like the LGBT rights movement. They are also promoting, staging the Born This Way campaign. What is Born This Way campaign? Born This Way campaigns that promotes the idea that this group of people are actually no different from than other people who are straight. They are all the straight people and LGBT people. They are also born this way. We are not different from them. But why, in the following I'm going to present the argument and to tell you why it is actually Born This Way campaign does not help to achieve the goal of the right movement, the LGBT right movement, which is to fight for more rights for the LGBT people. So the first thing is, why do we have to, the Born This Way campaign in itself is actually a kind of discrimination, is kind of discriminating the people from other people because, let's imagine this, a strict person do not have to join Born This Way campaign to tell people that we are strict. It's not necessary for them. Why do we have to differentiate those people, LGBT people, and stand out to say that, and come out to say that, oh, we are born this way, we're not different. So this is the first thing. Why the LGBT itself in itself, who are try to eliminate discrimination in the society towards them. Why this is not, they should not like continue to conduct this kind of campaign. And the second is the function of LGBT right movement. It's trying to help to the purpose of the movement is to organize activities to fight for their rights. But how Born This Way campaign can help achieve this goal? Actually, we can see that this is by telling people the outcome of Born This Way campaign is to tell people they're not different. But what they have to do is to fight for the the rights. But by telling people that they are actually no different from other people, do not essentially help them to help them to get more right, to change the government's policies, which is actually stipulated on the nuclear family model. So what I'm trying to say is that they should focus, they should shift their focus. Put more resources, allocate more resources on other activities that are actually helping with getting the right, fighting the right for the movement. Yes.
No, this movement is telling that all of them are actually equal and only different in physical attribute, and therefore we're actually reconciling them with that of the larger community instead of isolating them.
Yes, yeah, but what the LGBT rights movement is doing is that they have to try to, there are different movements out there that are organized by the LGBT, but the rights movement should focus on the rights issues. What they're lacking is the rights in today's society. And so that the rights movement, as the name says, is the movement that should focus on getting the rights for the for this group of people. So there are other types of movement that are more directed at getting this problem. They should maybe hold a campaign that try to. They should organize campaigns that promote the idea that they can form a family that is actually can help the world sustain. So this is what they have to do. They should not allocate resources on on campaign like Born This Way campaign to tell people that they are actually not different from others. And rather, as I said, they should focus the resources to have a campaign that can effectively achieve the purpose of the right movement, which is to fight for more rights for this group of people. And so we're proud to propose this motion.
I thank the Prime Minister for his speech. I invite the Leader of Opposition to open the case for opposition. Here.
Hello. Honorable Speaker, we see that the side proposition has identified the issue well. They have understood that the LGBTs are a group of people who are continuously suppressed by the society and who need a way out of it. However, they want to deny them the one right or the one way of campaign that is most successful, that has given them so many positive effects in the society. The reason that the example they have cited, that California now allows gay marriages, is because of the fact that the Californian government has come to the concession and acknowledged the idea that gay people cannot help the fact the way they choose their lifestyle, but it is an inherent quality, an inborn trait within them, which needs to be appreciated and which should not be discriminated against. The fact, what we have seen side proposition today, is that they established that LGBTs are a minority and they agree that they need to fight for more right. However, they say that the campaign is not the right way to do it. Fight for a right movement. The rights movement needs a reason for it to be a movement, and that reason itself is the fact that they're born this way, right? So what is side opposition going to give to you today? We're going to establish to you why we need diverse discourse in the society and why the LGBT should fight for being born this way. Secondly, how we are going to tell you how if you don't do so, how you're sectorizing them and not letting them integrate into the general society. Thirdly, we are going to talk to you about how religious groups or other conservative societies would not be able to accept the idea of why LGBTs exist in the first place if you do not give them a proper and accurate reason in doing so. And lastly, we're going to talk to you about how transsexuals are identified biologically to be something of an inborn quality, which my second speaker is going to talk about. So first of all, going about why we need diverse discourse. We believe that LGBTs have to this day established different forms of discourse and different forms of campaign. One of the most successful being born this way, and they've also fight for things like how they choose to be a LGBT. We say that their lifestyle being a choice, we say that it leads people to understand how LGBTs have a valid reason for being the way they are. The reason they choose their lifestyle to be so comes from the discourse and comes from the campaigns which they ride in the name of how they're born this way. And because they've been able to clarify and because they feel that this is an inborn quality, we see that research teams are also investing enough money in order to identify how these are epigenetic traits and how it is agreed to the fact that these are something which is an inborn quality and not any different from being of a different skin color and not something you should shy upon. Then going on to the second point about how it is going to marginalize them and separate them if they continue to if they continue to say this is more of a choice rather than an inborn trait. We say that it is important for people to understand that gay people are not gays or lesbian are not people who are very different or who are choosing to be different or choosing to behave in a particular manner. Because we have to understand that their actions and their personal emotions and their affections for the same sex comes from the fact that they have it in their inborn quality. Comes from the fact that they are born this way, right? And the reason we need it, and the only way a common general population can fully understand it is when they realize that this is not something completely by choice. This is something that can happen to their children as well. This is something that can happen to their brothers and sisters and not something that should be suppressed upon. The very fact that it is an inborn trait lets the general populace, who are the straight population, understand that this is something which you simply cannot choose and something you have within them and can happen to anyone and everyone. And it is better at this present state to understand that we can come in terms with it. Yes, sir. I'll take his point.
Why I choose to be gay is wrong. Justify to me why I choose to be gay is wrong. When gay is a choice, why is it wrong? Thank you.
Of course we say that being gay is a choice, but we say this choice derives from the fact that you're born like this. And the fact that it's an inborn trait drives this choice, and it, as we have said. Then going on to the second point about how religious groups and conservatives will not be able to come in terms with it. So what we see that in every religious book or doctrine, you have homosexuality highly discouraged. Because these people think that this is something homosexuals choose to be and something they're going against the directions of God. However, because right now, because of this movement have been properly able to establish that it's a trait given to us by the God that you pray for so much, by the God that you appreciate so much. It is the quality given by that God itself. It is the very reason why the Pope in Vatican City came forward and said, if you are born as a gay, what can I do about it? That is the reason religious groups are now coming in terms with it, because of the fact that they realize that their God has given these qualities within them. If you make this a choice movement, as the to rehash the point raised by opposition, as if they continue to say that it is something we are just inventing on ourselves and choosing to be different from the general public, what it strengthens the religious and conservative society's movement in the sense that they can have more reason to suppress this group by saying that you are choosing to be different from what our God dictates us to be. We also believe that gays and lesbians, since it is at the end of the day an inborn trait, they have a right to religion and a right to God as well. They should practice their religion as well, and you should make it open for them. If these religious groups make them shy away from it again and again, we say it is inherently wrong and you are depriving a particular human right from them, which is the right to practice your religion. We believe that emotions towards your God should also be shared with these people. Then going on to the point about how marginalizing can lead to essential harm. We say if you support a particular movement and you do not support another particular movement, you're shutting down the different views which come from different people. We say gays and lesbians should be free to establish whatever movement they want to, because there can be different views and different opinions, and one particular movement should not be systematically suppressed. When they say that you should allocate your resources in other movements, they have not been able to establish to us why the Born This Way movement has failed us so far. They've not been able to establish to us why it has not given us success, when under this paradigm we see that we are becoming more accepting towards these gay people, we are becoming more accepting towards these LGBT people, and that is why we believe that marginalizing them just shuts down the different kinds of discourse and the different kinds of people we have in our society. We do not want to be shut down towards one idea, because we understand that if the gay people feel that this is an inborn quality, they should be free to express it, and that is why marginalizing them is preventing the discourse and preventing them from sharing their feelings. And thus, what has opposition given to you today? We have successfully taken down their point about how this campaign is highly essential and actually beneficial and is being effective, how allocating in any other resources is not mutually exclusive, and you can do so but not suppressing one particular movement. We've also shown to you how instead of sectorizing them, we should try to integrate them into the society and not make them different from any other group or race. And we have also shown you how radical societies or conservative societies might behave negatively, and that is something we do not want. Thank you.
I kindly read the proposition for speech. I now invite the Deputy Prime Minister to extend the case development.
Mr. Madam Speaker, so it's really hard debate for our university and also as opening government. And our proposal actually is telling you that we actually respect the rights of being like lesbian, gay, bisexual, transsexual. And we actually respect some of them are born this way. But we're trying to abandon this campaign because we see these campaigns not as effective to actually fight for the rights for LGBT, first of all. And secondly, we see resources should be actually allocated on how the international community can actually support this kind of movement. We think it's actually the way to go. We're not sure because actually opposition side actually on like on this way is actually justified. But yeah, we respect this justification, but we think this campaign is not as effective as you have said. So rebuttals, two rebuttals. Firstly, they talk about it's something like not by choice, but it's something they want to. Yeah, we respect the choice, but we don't think it's actually effective to actually push for the rights for these people, because, ladies and gentlemen, a lot of countries actually, especially in the United States, in some United States and also in Russia, and a lot of actual decisions actually made by the government, especially in Russia. They actually recently they just promote the bill not to promote the non-traditional rights of these kind of like LGBT people. So I think it's actually under their legal framework, under the legal framework of these kind of countries, they are not protected. We don't think these kind of campaign, these kind of protests actually effective to actually push the government to change this constitution. We don't think it's effective. Secondly, they talk about like, oh, you're actually suppressing the group because some of them may want to like because like they just want to choose to be different, right? So some of them may not actually can help. And secondly, they talk about like you have to respect the religious belief. But ladies and gentlemen, we think it's again we respect the right to actually form this way, but we think the campaign is actually hard to force the government to not to suppress this kind of group. Because insist for, ladies and gentlemen, a lot of states and also other countries are actually suppressing this kind of people, but still, like under a lot of LGBT protests, it's not gonna work. So first of all, I would like to explain my arguments. First of all, it's what is Born This Way campaign and how is it not effective, and how is it ineffective? Secondly, why we think what is the ultimate way to help to improve the rights of this LGBT community? First of all, so what is this campaign about? This campaign is about people who fight to go into protest to fight for their rights, but it's they're actually talking about like we are actually like on this way, and we actually like after born we actually have the right to be equal. But the thing is, yeah, we respect the right. But the thing is, we don't think these kind of like campaigns actually work, because these kind of campaigns actually initiated by the citizens, right? But that kind of citizens, that kind of minorities is by minorities later. this kind of minorities is actually not protected in a lot of countries, especially in Russia and in some developing countries, and also actually some states in the United States. So we think it's actually not effective to actually promote this campaign, because these kind of campaigns actually, as initiated by the interest groups, and these are interest groups actually not effective as to actually push the government. So how actually can push for rights of these kind of people? First of all, we think these kind of resources should be put to a more effective way, as to not only to protect the government, is to calling on the international community and calling on other governments to actually push for these kind of rights. Why is it so? Because, ladies and gentlemen, how we can actually push for these kind of rights in developing countries? Ladies and gentlemen, because a lot of developing countries are some of them authoritarian, and some of them are actually it depends on whether the international community, it depends on the power, the bargaining power between the countries. So they actually need this kind of force to actually push for the rights, but not actually by the citizens. So I think it's actually not effective. And secondly, we talk about they want to promote the rights not to be discriminated, right? They want to promote the rights not to recognize, right? How is actually people to recognize these minorities? We think these minorities are protected by the government, but in some countries, when this is not so, we don't think the citizens can actually help, can actually force to actually change the situation. We don't think it's actually work, because a lot of countries actually banning these because it's by the court, by jurisdiction, by the parliament forces. It's not actually by the actual citizens can actually help. So my second argument comes to actually why these kind of people are actually should be equal, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, our panel have told you if normal people can actually express their views, because they some LGBT community can actually they don't have to actually express their views, because, ladies and gentlemen, these kind of people are equal. When they're equal, the normal people with actually, I mean not normal, but actually people with traditional values actually get no need to actually voice this opinion. But why is it they have to? It's not actually the way, but actually this effectiveness of this policy is actually not that strong, because I don't think government will actually be pushed by these kind of forces. So I think we respect the sexual orientation, different things. We respect the people actually to be rights, and we respect the protests also. But we don't think these protests actually can help the LGBT movement. So that's why very powerful.
Thank you, Speaker, for your speech. I now invite the Deputy of the Opposition to extend the case for opposition.
Mr. Speaker, we thought that this debate is about whether it is better for the campaign to move by the idea that it is good to be different, or it is good to be by choice in terms of homosexual. But it turns out that the opening house debate is simply about how this policy in terms of international affairs, etc. We're going to firstly engage with the paradigm that's being set out by OG, and we're going to talk to you why this debate and the idea of Born This Way is essential towards the campaign. First of all, they believe that this campaign is actually discriminating people. No, we say that this campaign is actually reconciling that of the gays with that of the community, because they are not to be different by choice. They are different because they are born in that particular sexual orientation, in the sense that they believe that they are normal just like blacks are normal to that of whites. We believe that this is essential physical characteristics, and therefore we're not discriminating these people, we are reconciling them. Secondly, they believe that it's not effective for the government to actually fight for rights under this model. They believe that because it is decided by the government. We say that the government essentially does all of these jobs because they believe that this is actually abnormal to that of in the general public's eyes, and therefore the government do that. And we quote examples like Uganda just legalizing these kinds of homosexual laws, essentially again because they believe in conservative societies. They are different. They choose to be different instead of born in this way, and therefore the government is doing that. And therefore, in order for the government to change their behaviors, we have to show to the government and to the general public that we are just the same as anyone, just like black is just the same as the white, in this idea of physical attributes instead of ideas by choice. Furthermore, they believe that the idea is that they believe resources should be allocated differently, and we believe that and resources should be allocated to the idea like international community and pressurizing them. We believe that, first of all, it's not mutually exclusive. International organizations can continue to pressurize people. But secondly, we believe that you need a justification to the general public why you actually initiate this. International community needs a justification also for the people to understand that why you are actually supporting the LGBT movement. And therefore, this justification, we believe it's better with the idea of Born This Way movement. But let's look at what this debate should be really about. This debate should firstly look at idea of discourse in terms of LGBT movement. We believe that these idea of why you are gay or why you're lesbian, they're not mutually exclusive. Different people have different interpretations as to why they are of a particular sexual orientation. And therefore the LGBT movement flourished essentially because there are so many discourses. There are ideas like you're born this way, there are ideas like because it's by choice. We believe they're not mutually exclusive. But this motion is saying that we should abandon this born this way movement, but there's no justification coming from the government why the idea of by choice is intrinsically better than that of born this way movement. We believe that they can exist coexistently. Yes, sir.
If we abandon the Born This Way campaign, we are not coming out and telling people that Born This Way campaign is wrong. We are just telling people we are actually allowing different discourses to happen because we're not.
No, sir. No, sir. We are not allowing different discourse because you're banning an essential discourse in that of the LGBT movement. Born This Way is a discourse and how people believe in the idea of rights movement. We believe that it's essentially important. But let's look at what is the best way in order to advance the LGBT community. What we've given you at opening opposition is the idea that in order for the conservative general public to sympathize with you, which is essentially why many countries didn't legalize it, is the very importance that you need to be shown that you're not different from that of the general public. You need to be showing that you, as a human being, is just the same as that of the Conservative Party. We believe that, as was pointed out, the idea of religious oppositions come very strongly in the LGBT movement. Born This Way campaign is essentially in reconciling this difference because, for example, in some Christian organizations oppose this because the Bible may have said that. But if we actually use the Born This Way movement, we're essentially telling you the God is creating me with this specific sexual orientation, and there's nothing to be ashamed of that. And this is essentially the way of reconciling with these religious organizations that's never been tackled by that of the opening government. Furthermore, if this Born This Way campaign is actually being abolished, now the religious organizations have every incentive to come and tell you that, okay, you are actually different by choice, and therefore you are actually not doing what, you actually do not comply with what the religious organizations is all about. And therefore we believe that this actually marginalizes the LGBT community further away from the conservative sector of society, which is important in advancing social rights in that of the country. Furthermore, we are talking about the idea of how to strengthen that of the campaign. We believe that by abolishing the Born This Right movement, we're actually marginalizing particular groups of people inside the LGBT community who believe that they're essentially born this way. We pour examples like transsexuals. Transsexuals people believe that they're born this way. They believe that they're born in a female body when they're actually having male attributes. This is essentially why transsexual people want to do a change in terms of surgery, because they believe that they are born in the wrong body. If we actually abolish this Born This Way movement, we're actually separating that of the transsexuals people away from that of the movement instead of actually reconciling them. But we say that it's very important for the LGBT community to be actually unified as a whole in order to go and in order to advance their rights. And therefore, they, as the opening government, has never proven to us why intrinsically born this right movement is something that is wrong, and they've never compared to us why the other by choice campaign is something that is better than that of the Born This Way movement, and they've never even tried to prove to us why these two movements cannot actually coexist in order to reflect the diversity of LGBT movements that is currently existing and that is currently thriving, which means that LGBT movement is good because it is diversified. So what has opening opposition told you? We believe that this movement is the best way in actually reconciling the differences between conservative people, in advancing the rights between various groups and parties, and including the transsexuals, the gays and lesbians. We believe that this is the way of unity in order to allow the LGBT movement to strive. We believe that by the alternative model, we believe that it actually excludes a particular group of people that is detrimental to the LGBT movement. We're very proud to oppose.
I thank the Deputy Leader for Opposition for his speech. I now invite the Member of Government to extend the case of the low government.
Mr. Speaker, today, coming to the lower house debate, we think that the opening opposition actually mischaracterizes the whole debate, because when we say that we have to abandon the Born This Way campaign, we are not actually abandoning the whole theory. We are not trying to abandon the whole Born This Way theory, because there is a substantial and fundamental difference between campaign and theory. When we're talking about campaign, we're actually actively supporting and advancing that theory, right? But when we are saying that we are not abandoning the theory, only that we are trying to abandon the campaign, now we are saying that we are putting the Born This Way theory and the freedom of choice theory on equal footing, letting them to go forward on equal ground, that they can actually contest with each other without one being superior over the other. So the whole opposition bench actually mischaracterizes the whole debate, and we, the closing government, rejects that characterization. And we think that because of that, they have already lost that whole case. Now, but let's just deal with some of the arguments coming from their side. So they are trying to say that, with this motion, then we're actually trying to shut down different narratives, but I've already proven to you that it is only trying to encourage discourse. Now, they've also talked about how with this motion, then the religious societies and churches will then gain an upper hand over the debates between the LGBT movement and the straight people, right? But we say that this is not, because right now what we observe in the current status quo is that there is a deadlock in the debate between straight people and LGBT people, with LGBT people advancing this campaign, Born This Way campaign, and then the religious groups saying that, no, they are not born this way, they are born that way. They are not born gay, but they are born straight. So there is actually a deadlock over there. So what we can actually do is to withdraw our support for that campaign, so that we can actually allow a different kind of discourse to take place. We can actually allow them to advance another argument, that is the freedom of choice theory. That is how we can break the dominating narrative of the churches and of the religious societies, and that is how we can advance the LGBT movement, movement. Ladies and gentlemen, so moving on to my own points. No. And they also come up with a very weird idea about how, like, with this motion, it will simply take away the rights of these kind of LGBT people from taking part in religion. We say this is completely not true. We say that even within churches, we cannot view them as a homogeneous society. There are progressive churches and many other churches, so that will allow the participation of LGBT people in the church religious activities. No, we as the closing government would like to uniquely bring to you 2 points. First of all, we will tell you why we should actually withdraw our support for this campaign. Firstly, because this theory is not without errors. It's not without loopholes. We acknowledge that the born this way theory has loopholes, has errors. That is, and also the freedom of choice movement also has its drawbacks, right? That is why we actually have to withdraw our support for one particular campaign, for one particular support, so that we can actually let different ideas to actually go forward. Then we can let the general public decide. Now, and we also say that one greater implication for that is that if we can allow different theories to go forward, then it can also propel scientific development. Because when we have that kind of different kind of narratives going on, you do not have one domination of one theory over the other, then there will be scientific development research that the opening option has been talking about to actually to take a look and research and examine upon the real reasons for the LGBT sexual preferences, right? Now, my first point about how this born this way theory is with loopholes. So we say that, first of all, there is still contention and debates and challenges within the LGBT communities and within the scientific and communities that which theories should be good, because they take a look at the genes, they take a look at the birthday, they take a look at their raising background, their environment. They still cannot come to a unitary and a very conclusive conclusion, right? That is why we say that this is not without errors. No, and we say that with this campaign, it is simply contrary to the spirit of LGBT movements, because LGBT movements is trying to talk about multiple opportunities, right? Multiple pathways. It's not about having the straight to dominate all the possibilities, that saying that conventional sexual preferences, conventional sexual orientations are the only way to go. That is why we say that it is fundamentally contrary and contradictory to the spirit of LGBT movement. Now, we also say that there will be also because with this current campaign, it will simply be a positive discrimination against those who actually try to become gay because they feel they want to. Those who actually support and adhere to the freedom of choice theory, because right now first of all, they are already gay or they are already lesbians. Now they are already being segregated and discriminated by the mainstream society, right? And now they are actually suffering from double discrimination, because right now their own communities, their own LGBT communities are also supporting another campaign that is supporting the right of those who actually support the born this way theory. They who actually support the freedom of choice theory will actually now face very dire consequences of double discrimination. Yes?
If you're abandoning one kind of theory, which is the born this way theory, aren't you prioritizing the other theory and not allowing both of them to run at the same time?
Of course not. We are only withdrawing the support for that campaign. I've already explained to you very explicitly at the very beginning of my speech that when you actually campaign over something, you're actively supporting one theory, ranking one theory over the other. That is what we mean by campaign, right? But if we withdraw the support for this campaign, we are simply letting both theories to go forward and actually to garner support from the general public. Now, we also say that this theory is problematic because there will be sexuality changes, ladies and gentlemen. Because over time, people may think that, oh, I actually want to try to become a gay, and their sexuality, sexual preferences may change over time. That is why this born this way theory is come under attack, is come under loophole, because when you argue that it is your genes that determine your sexuality, when you have these cases, these situations coming forward, then you are actually destroying your own credibility. That is how we should actually abandon the campaign. Now, on to my second point about how we can actually advance the LGBT movement and develop the LGBT movement with this motion. Because we say that with this motion being passed, we can actually recruit more supporters, which is the essential element of the success of any campaign, right? We should actually recruit more supporters. And how can we do so? Because right now, there are many liberals who support the general idea of freedom, but they actually do not support LGBT rights. Because first of all, they do not know a lot of things about LGBT movement. And then second of all, they see that the LGBT movement is actually trying to say that it should be a born this way campaign, it should be a born this way theory. That is why those liberals who actually support the freedom of choice theory will not support the LGBT movement. So that is why we can actually recruit more supporters because of that. And also we can consolidate our own original supporters, because now we are actually putting these two theories on equal footing. They can actually debate on equal grounds. That is how we can unite the whole party. And this is very important, ladies and gentlemen, because the perception of LGBT communities being viewed by the general public is very important. We're now actually changing the perception towards a very positive one, saying that we LGBT communities are not trying to rank one theory over the other. We are promoting unity. We are trying to promote a very harmonious, united image of the LGBT communities. And because we want the LGBT movement to succeed, we're very, very proud to propose.
I thank the member of government for speech. I now invite the member of opposition.
We heard a false characterization from the government today. They were talking as if being born this way and taking pride in my sexuality are two completely mutually exclusive things. We say that it's completely possible to say, I am born this way, my genetics forced me to be like this, and I'm very, very proud to be a lesbian. I think that these two discourses are not mutually exclusive, thus their entire case falls, right? We have also told you that they're prioritizing one theory over the other. Why did this campaign come to place in the first place? One, it's because their idea about promoting freedom of choice has failed for decades. That's why they came up with this campaign, and it's showing us empirical success, right? Two, it's also because majority of the LGBT people believe in this campaign, that they support the LGBT movement with this policy. And that's why we say that this campaign carries on more legitimacy to be the public claim of the LGBT groups. Now let's move on to some actual rebuttals. Now in the opening house, there are a lot of ideas about whether we should focus on the rights movement only, right? One, we say that we say the rights are not enough. We need to we need to change people's perception as well, because that's what determines their daily lives, because that's what sets glass ceilings, right? But even if we talk about only the advancement of rights in terms of policy, we say that our policy actually helps them advance the right, because we help LGBT people to identify with a greater number of people, right? Which is also my substantive, because they're born this way. Like blacks were born as blacks, like whites were born as whites, like Jews were born as Jews. So we allow them to be identified with greater members of the society, and we also bring them the moral high ground. We do not discriminate against people for what they're born with. We have the moral high ground if we go with this campaign, and that's why we help people advance their right. We also see that their idea about campaign versus theory to be completely bogus. Because one, campaign is what changes people's thoughts. What happens in scientific journals doesn't change what people believe. That's why campaigns matter, not theories. We say that two, our policy brings unique benefit. One, identifying with more people, having more high ground universally, right? We also see that their idea about the deadlock is completely false, in the sense that one, it's not happening. We have already seen changes. The Pope has declared to support LGBT. We have seen constitutional changes in the states. We say that the deadlock is non-existent in the first place. And two, even if we concede to some degree that there may be deadlock in certain very isolated locations, we say that their policy is a bad thing, because when there's a power match between two things, they're just conceding to the one side, which is unbeneficial to LGBT, and we say deadlock is better than giving the other side complete victory just by abandoning this policy. Now let's move on to some substantive from the closing. We have two very strong substantive extensions to add to today's debate. One, this will bring imminent harm, which hurts the LGBT groups. Two, our policy will bring more support from the family and parents. Now let's talk about the first one. This is about how LGBT groups will be influenced by abandoning this Born This Way campaign. Now, if the LGBT groups are not born this way, what they're basically intrinsically saying is that being lesbian or gay or transsexual is a choice, right? It's that, oh, I decide that this is better for me. That's why I'm going to make a very conscious decision to go against the social norms. That's basically what criminalizes LGBTs. This is the logic of criminalizing LGBTs, because people set up social norms and some people make a conscious decision to go against that social norm. This is the logic of criminalizing LGBTs, which have suppressed LGBTs for decades after decades, right? This is what's happening in Uganda right now. We say that brings very imminent harm to the people, because they'll be sent to places like correction camps. They'll be sent to places like jail. We say that having LGBT analogous to crime is inherently harmful because it brings about very concrete harms to the LGBT groups. The people are going to try to fix them. And what this brings about is a systematic harm and systematic implementation of discrimination by the government through things like correction camp or things like jails. What happens is the LGBT people who are inside the closet are going to be more afraid of coming out because they know that there are very concrete harms to them. And this brings less momentum to the LGBT movement. This undoes any benefit the LGBT movement has brought to the advancement of the rights of these people so far. We see that also the self-perception is harmed because people are now going to be unable to reconcile with what they are. The people, your parents, the society tells you that one way is the right way to act. This is the social norm. You should not go against it. If you go against it, you're so wrong. You should be sent to a correction camp. At the same time, the LGBT people will find themselves keep going against the social norm, desiring things that the society tells you not to desire, right? They're unable to reconcile with their inherent identity, which brings harms such as suicide, which brings harm such as lack of self-actualization in their lives. We say that this is extremely harmful to the people, but we say that our policy brings about inclusion because it points out to similarities between people, right? We already talked about racial minorities. The Jews supported the U.S. civil rights movement because they were able to identify with the fact that certain minorities trying to advance their right. We say that Born This Way campaign brings about the same logic to allow more people to join the movement, help the movement. We say that this is a new way to identify people and bring more supporters. We also say that this will bring legal precedent, right? Because the LGBT people are now able to use legal precedents such as skin color discrimination to advance their rights. Oh, blacks were born this way, and they cannot be discriminated legally. We were born this way, we cannot be discriminated this way. That's why our policy prevents the imminent harm of their policy. We say that the parents' inclusion, which is our second extension, is extremely important as well. Because when parents give birth to their children, they understand that the genetics comes from themselves, right? Whether they have blue eyes or brown eyes, it's not the child's choice, but it's a product of their parents' genetic composition. We say that if LGBT equality is something that is accepted and born this way, then it moves the moral judgment that the parents give to the children because it's something that comes from them, it's not their choice. We also see that parents will stop trying to change their children or enforce certain moral judgment on them. And we say that this brings more parental and family acceptance, which is extremely important because one, this is a primary social institution, especially for young people who derive their value from family attention. And two, because when these people try to fight against the social stigma, family serves as a primary function of supporters, allies, in terms of their social discourse and how they try to achieve their identity. For these reasons, we're extremely helpful.
I thank the member proposition for his speech. I now invite the government to sound the case of government.
Today we see a failed opposition, which they do not acknowledge that society has effect, which people may change their sexuality. Like I had several girlfriends, but now I'm gay, I'm in love with my partner today. And secondly, they do not care what people truly support, as long as the LGBT people benefit from something. But not because of they acknowledging what LGBT people are truly is, but simply because they have effect. What we want to truly do today by this movement is firstly by an inclusive and also tolerate framework, and no single discrimination should be allowed in such kind of LGBT movement. A few points of rebuttal before my concluding today's debate. Firstly, they mentioned that for several decades of failure, then we should do this in order to get the effect. We do not want this to be done because people now see this as a coercive choice when they are born and look down on these people because we should get some pity with these people, so we should not discriminate them and we should help them. And also, that is why there are some effects of LGBT. We do not want this. We just want to say that LGBT is actually a choice and they should respect this kind of choice, and this is what we truly want to promote, but not only the effect that that they claim to have. And secondly, they raise about an example of a race where black people born to be black, and then they claim to be born this way. Now I have told you that for sexuality, for LGBT, there is not a single reason. I can change my sexuality. They fail to challenge this point, and we, as a responsible government, we want to include these type of people into the community, into our discussion today, but not force them to believe in what we are trying to uphold it by using this dominant theory, saying that everything is inborn today. No. Two clashes today to prove that the closer government is the winning side today. First clash on the nature of the Born This Way campaign. Secondly, it's on the effects of abandoning and how does it can further propel, further advance the movement of LGBT rights movement, and also how does it affect the general public's perception. Firstly, on the nature of Born This Way. Now, the opposition side, why they today came out and claim that it's a good way, they use several examples to prove that simply because it's a good slogan or a good way to advertise. But we see that why they can capture people's attention or why people would generally support this kind of thing. It's not because people truly understand what LGBT people want, but people were shocked that these might be actually some inherent or fundamental stuff. And more importantly, they are trying to promote a concept that this is kind of thing that is fundamentally wrong. Now, why I have to justify I'm a straight people, and why I have to give reason whether I'm born to be a straight people or I change to be a straight people? That is the reason why they claim to be born this way. It's what actually they're trying to promote, that born this way is something abnormal and that is strange. What we are trying to say is not. It's something equal, it's something absolutely normal, and it's nothing to be special to talk about and when we are fighting for equal grounds. Now they may give another example about transgender belief that they are born this way and born this way in the wrong body. We believe that this is exactly the negative consequence of our campaign if we keep goes on like that. It speaks simply because now people do not fail to acknowledge that the fact there's nothing wrong with their transgender, but now they see that their gender, their body is wrong with their mentality, which we believe that it's a kind of negative product and it exerts an adverse impact from these campaigns. And actually nothing is wrong with that when we should not promote such kind of differences between mentality and body. And as my partner has already told you that born this way, another fundamental problem is like the debate in America, which people will respond that way to attack it in the meantime. Yes, sir. Yes, madam.
Sir, to your point about transitory sexual orientation, we think that you may be able to change your sexual orientation. However, people who are actually gay cannot change it even if they want to, which is the reason they try to promote that slogan.
Ma'am, we are not trying to say that these people should change, but we do not acknowledge that the fact that people cannot change from straight to gay, and that is exactly the differences we want to promote it today. And to the constructive matter that my partner has already told you. My partner has told you that whenever this born this way is being upheld, it is a resort from free choice to a coercive choice. That is, the minorities now, they is trying to portray that these type of minority people, they do not want to do this. They have no choice. But actually, inherently, as I've proven to you for the entire speech, there's nothing wrong of being an LGBT community. And secondly, it is an unnecessary justification. We see that this is an unnecessary justification unless something is wrong or abnormal. But as I've mentioned to you, that straight or LGBT all are normal, and we no need to disclose or explain the reasons behind. And thirdly, we believe more importantly, it is inconsistent with the LGBT rights movement. Because what are we trying to say? We are trying to support freedom, opportunity, choice, and a variety of reasons. So we do not want to resort, or we do not want to group these people into a single umbrella. And finally, it acknowledges that the sexuality can change its ultimate recognition of free choice. On second clash, it's the effect of abandoning. Now the government side, they say whenever we abandon such kind of views, we would like to tend to shut down different views. Now we don't exactly get the logic, but I will still try my best to rebut it. And because we see that whenever we abandon this Born This Way campaign, we are just saying that we don't think that is a dominant theory. We think that it's only one of the many theories that might be able to explain why I am a part of LGBT community, and we do not want to stereotype any kind of possibility. They also mention about religious group prosecution. And firstly, we think that they discriminate not because of LGBT, they discriminate LGBT not because of the reasons behind, but they discriminate them because of Bible. We don't see that there is a likely change they will propose. And secondly, the religion will explain these people when you say born this way, they will resort that it's a God's choice and God's punishment to them. We see that this might cause a greater harm even towards the LGBT people. Their extension from the closing opposition was about imminent harm, that is, or the possible inclusion of these people. But as my partner has already told you that if we do not abandon this kind of born this way movement, we force people to believe in this is the only way, and this is extremely harmful to the people who will change their sexuality like me. And finally, for the point like support for family, we see that they claim that there will be a likelihood it will put further burden or blame onto the family members like father and mother, which they will try to blame themselves, and they will try to not try to care more, but instead they will try to keep this thing because they think it's abnormal. And finally, this hits onto their assumption again that assume it's wrong or not a good thing to be LGBT community. Wow, on our side we have clearly, closing government has clearly told you that this is unifying the LGBT community regardless of reasoning, and we do not reject this theory, we just don't want to make it dominant, and the outer public will not view LGBT as a disadvantaged group, as they will not see them as problematic. So, breaking the deadlock, we see we are talking about changes or not. But we care more about the true reason for change and why would people change, not because they are mere changes, but we want them to truly recognize us, truly recognize the LGBT community. Their best case is people wrongly believe that LGBT is a biological consequence and pity on me. But our worst case is a slow but a good choice. Finally, I can stand here and marry my partner. Thank you.
Thank the government whip for its speech. I now invite the opposition whip to resolve the case for opposition and end the debate in the
Ladies and gentlemen, 2 rebuttals against closing government, and then moving on to my 3 clashes of today's debate, right? So firstly, about some rebuttals to their extensions, right? They talked about, number 1, double discrimination, how people who believe in the freedom of choice within this community will be discriminated by their own community and the larger society, right? First of all, that is completely contradictory to their own case, right? Because they say that once we withdraw this support, they can still be part of the born this way theory, can still be part of the community discourse, so they won't be discriminated within the community. Now they say if we withdraw the support, everybody will start believing in freedom of choice, and then all the liberals will be attracted because there's this freedom of choice factor, right? Their case is entirely nonsense, and moreover, we say that the liberals are the people who already believe it who already side with the LGBT community in all of the Western liberal democracies in the first place, right? We don't believe that this brings any extra benefits. Secondly, they talk about how the minorities, like why do we have to explain that we were born this way, right? They fundamentally lack an understanding of what the LGBT rights goal are. Their goal is to increase the rights and the equality of treatment of the LGBT group, right? In order to do that, they should do all the advertising they want in order to make sure that people actually treat them in an equal fashion, right? We believe that they have all the incentive to do so because their entire goal is not to explain why, but to actually ensure that people actually treat the LGBT community with respect. Because of this reason, they should explain why we're the same, just as them, right? But secondly, they say that because of this transsexual thing, we're gonna see them as like somebody with like this, with a born defect, right? We don't believe this is true. Firstly, we say that we actually don't believe this is a defect. We actually see them as some of the innate variabilities within the human race. For example, skin color or eye color, right? But secondly, even if some people do see it as a defect, for example, like vision, right? People do wear like glasses, that doesn't make them second-class citizens, right? We believe that even if they see it as some sort of defect, as long as they know that it's natural, they will actually accept them rather than try to correct them in the first place, right? So moving on to my 3 clashes, right? Firstly, I'm going to talk about the individual. Secondly, I'm going to talk about the family. And thirdly, about the larger community. No thank you. So, about the individual. Closing government never dealt with our unique extension about why there's so much harm happening in the status quo, right? We believe that right now, parents, religiously conservative parents or otherwise conservative parents, send their children into educational camps in order to correct this sort of homosexuality, right? We believe that in those places, people commit suicide because they cannot reconcile with themselves that part of their parents because because their parents tell them this is your free choice, but in themselves they find this irresistible need to actually find other people attractive, right? So we say that because of this freedom of choice, parents send their children to try to correct themselves, and that's what's causing all the harm in the status quo. But their policy, actually, with their freedom of choice, is actually going to extend this harm even further. But secondly, beyond the physical harm, there's a lot of psychological harm happening in the first place, right? This psychological harm is only being able to be mitigated because of the born this way theory, right? We tell them you're born this way, thus you don't have to feel ashamed for choosing this sinful lifestyle, right? This is uniquely brought to you by closing opposition again. That only the born this way policy solves this sort of inner conflict within the individual that causes so much psychological and even physical harm that the closing government never really dealt with in today's debate. Because of this reason, because of this imminent harm, the thousands of teenagers who commit suicide and more of the psychological diseases, we believe that this reason alone is a concrete reason for us to support the Born This Way campaign, right? But secondly, let's talk about the parents, right? Especially, we believe that parents is an important actor, again, brought to you by closing opposition, because the majority of the underage vast majority of the underage people live under the guardianship of the parents, right? The parents have all the powers in order to make all the life decisions for those people. What the belief of the parents is the most important thing, right? If they believe that this is some sort of freedom of choice, that thus it will conflict with their fundamentally religiously conservative belief that this is a sinful life choice, right? So that's what brings the parents to dislike their children. Well, that's what gives the parents the sort of pressurization to the children that causes psychological harm because they don't feel like they're loved. Moreover, this is actually going to, for some cases, lead to like a lot of violence against these children because they're trying to correct this sinful lifestyle, right? Closing government said that they will just bring about government, the parents will disdain themselves because of this, but still treat their children in a bad way. We don't believe this is going to happen because parents fundamentally have a love for their children, right? They're only treating their children badly because they believe that this is a freedom of, this is their choice, and they're choosing a wrong thing, right? If you're actually born this way, we don't believe that parents will still blame their children. Instead, they'll actually treat their children well because they know that this is not something that's actually born, right? We don't believe whether or not, we don't believe parents will actually intentionally harm their children even though they're born this way. Yes?
So, right now, if you actually abandon the Born This Way campaign, then the parents will also blame the children because they will actually blame them on their genes and they will also blame themselves. That will actually create a much bigger problem within the family. No.
You don't deal with our problem that we brought up, right? Because parents are trying to forcibly correct these children. That's what led to a lot of the psychological and physical harms in those cases because they believe this is a choice. If they don't believe this is a choice, there will be no correction in the first place, right? Thirdly, moving on to my third clash about the community, right? So, firstly, we talk to you about there are the religious conservative and the politically conservative people that are actually the main people who are pushing discrimination against the LGBT community, right? But it is closing government that actually brought to you unique extensions about why our policy will actually help to the betterment of the LGBT community because it will bring about more recognition within the larger community. First of all, we told you there is a wide history of minorities struggling for equal rights, right? We have religious minorities, for example, the Jews. We have like minorities, for example, the Africans in the United States, right? We believe that this is a large community who actually are potential allies for the LGBT community. It is because we say we are born this way, just like the Jews who have Jewish ancestry or the Africans who are born with the skin color. This actually brings about a lot of empathy from those minority groups. That these are natural allies of the LGBT movement. That's only brought to you by closing government. We believe that there will be strong forces against these sort of campaigns, and we believe that this actually helps. For example, like Jewish people donating towards the civil rights movement, right? They're a very big factor. Number two, we talked to you about how there will be more acceptance in the family, and thus there will be more familial understanding towards the nature of the LGBT group, and thus the family will, instead of pushing the LGBT people in the first place, they're actually more likely to side with the LGBT people in order to fight with the larger community, right? Because we believe that the number of parents and relatives of these LGBT people, they're actually much more likely to bring about societal change. These are all extensions brought to you by closing government, closing opposition. That's why we're very proud to oppose.
I thank the opposition whip for his speech. I thank all speakers for a great debate. Cross doors, shake hands in the education panel. Please come outside for discussion.
Thank you.